Today's lesson is about trimming pots. So these four pieces that you see have not yet been trimmed. They are right off the wheel, and you can see that there's kind of a rough edge there. Now you can also see evidence here where, you know, that pre-trim that I talk about, that wasn't done on this pot. But I'm going to show that this can be trimmed. And the real point of this lesson is that finishing off the bottom of your pot is really an important thing to do, and that there are a number of different ways to think about it and to approach it, but that it's important to make your pot look like it's actually been finished. So here are a couple of examples of what I mean. So this pot is trimmed with a real foot. You can see that it's got a ring that goes around the perimeter there. It's nicely finished, and then, you know, the pot actually has a foot to sit on, so that's good. And a much older style, well, let's not call it older, a different style is a pot that looks like this. Now you can see with this pot, it's smooth on the bottom and it's got a depression. This is more like a production potter's foot. The impression is made by just banging your wrist on the center of that when it's soft enough to move, and that makes a little bit of a foot. And it is trimmed around the perimeter here, so it's not totally untrimmed, but it's a different way of thinking about it. And then another similar idea, this is simply a totally flat, it's kind of polished flat bottom. You can see that it's trimmed up to the edges to make it look neat. And another thing about the trimming process is really the finishing process. You see I have a stamp here, which is an identifier that that's my pot. And I also have a serial number here, which shows 22 is the year that pot was made, and 075, that's the pot number. So these are my ways of finishing pots, and maybe not for everybody, but the point of this lesson is, how do you go about finishing? You know, what's important? On my bat here, I have a few tools that are relevant to this process. So these two tools are the basic trimming tools that come in a toolkit. Many people like more robust, stronger tools. These are made out of stainless steel, and they're pretty hard, pretty unforgiving. They'll really cut nice sharp lines. So I've got some rectangular ones and some curved ones of those. This is just the lid. Let me get that out of there. This is my newest stamp. So this stamp will go on the bottom of the pots that I finish these days. And this little stamp is just a number stamp that I adjust for putting the serial number on. So these are some of the tools that I have. And then the other thing is that you can do trimming on a bat, but a lot of times we have this tool that we can use. This is called the Giffen grip, and you can see that it's got three, let's call them fingers. And if you turn this to the right, it will tighten up. If you turn it to the left, it will loosen up. You can see that the fingers kind of come out. And so the way this works is you put a pot up on top of there and then spin it to the right. It will close up on that pot. Sometimes you have to adjust it a little bit. And now that's good to go. I can spin this. You can see that it's nicely centered, and although it looks like there's a little bit of a wobble there, I can fix that. It's nicely centered, and this is a tool that makes the mounting process much simpler for when pots are going to be trimmed. So I think that just needs to be pushed down a little bit. Let me pause for a second, and then we'll continue. So now we continue with the trimming discussion. Let me just check the grip and see why it might have had a little shake to it. These need to be emptied out once in a while, so I'm just getting the loose clay off of it, and I'm going to put it back properly. This should not have a wall. Yeah, that doesn't look like it's wobbling now. Okay, so this is my bowl, which did not get the pre-trim on it. This is leather hard. It's actually, you know, this being porcelain, as I discussed before, it's a little bit different from other clays. This is maybe just a little bit past leather hard, so I would expect to get nice, good, clean cuts on this, but it may be a little bit, take a little bit more pressure to get the cuts done. So I'm just going to set my tools down here. I don't use all of them all the time, so get them off the bat. Okay, so this is all centered up, and if I give this a spin, it should look like a pretty regular situation. Now, so what we want to do, first of all, is make sure that the bottom is flat. So I do that normally with this tool, which is, honestly, this is a pear corer. Kemper has kind of usurped that shape and made it into a pottery trimming tool, but that's a pear corer, and you can use the long flat edge of that to just get a nice flat surface on the bottom of the pot. So what I like to do is, I don't like these shavings to go everywhere, so I just toss them in a little scrap bucket that I keep right at the wheel. Now, the most, a very important thing is to get rid of all this kind of flashing on the side. So we'll just kind of carefully ease this tool down around the corner. You can see I'm pulling off pretty big chunks of clay, and that just needs to be continued. You don't want to get too aggressive with this, but you do want to remove the parts that don't look very finished, right? So you can see all this kind of flashing coming off there, and things are starting to look more trimmed up and nice. So I'll continue at this, just trying to make the part with the finger marks and the nice arc. We want to continue that and make it look like it was all made at once. And so that's just a matter of easing this line up to some kind of finishing point, and pretty close. Sometimes I like to trim in a way that mimics fingerprints. If I'm not actually taking the prints out, what you can do is I take the back of my thumbnail and just kind of go like this. Maybe my nail is not on the camera side, so you can't see it as well. But I think you can see that I did put some little subtle lines in there that look like finger marks. Now the bottom is not quite flat, so I'm going to continue trying to do that. You can see this is coming off in some pretty wide shavings now, which indicates that we're removing material and making that pretty flat. So we'll continue. Now, there are many ways to think about this corner part here. I showed an example where it's left completely flat. A more formal trimming method, which I like to do many times, is I like to put a little bit of a curve mark right here, and I'm going to put that in and show you. I'm using this trimming tool, which is kind of the other one that comes with the Kemper kit. We use the rounded edge, not the flat edge. And we're just going to go right to where this corner is, and we're going to try to put a little round mark there. hopefully this shows up on the camera. You can see that I'm just making a kind of a shelf there. Shelf is not the right word. It's this spot right here is going to be a break point for the glaze. So this is upside down, and when there's glaze on this, it will be running this direction toward the bottom of the pot. And when it encounters this little corner right here, the glaze should stop running. Now, if you've got a real runaway situation, doesn't help. But in most normal circumstances, when the glaze runs just a little bit and it hits that corner, it will pool up there and stop. And that means it won't continue down to the kill shelf and destroy your kill shelf. So I'm just making this cut a little bit deeper, and honestly that is actually pretty good. There's a little bit of a low spot right there. I'm going to see what I can do with that, but actually no, let's not do that. Let's come back with this tool, and instead of the rounded edge, I'm going to use the squared off edge, but I'm going to use just the corner of it. And I'm going to go right to the center of my bottom of my pot, and hopefully you can see some of this. You can see that I'm cutting the material not very deep, because I've only got about 1/4 inch of bottom on this pot, but I'm just cutting out to make a foot. So what I like to do sometimes is come right to where the width of the foot will be established and make a line, so I get some material off, and then I can start back in the middle and work my way out to that line. Or you can start at the line and go into the center, but I think it works a little better to start in the center and come out to that line. So there we have it. Each time you do that, you get some shavings, and you just put those in your bucket. Please don't leave your shavings laying all over the table, because then somebody else is going to have to clean that up. So this is a completed bottom. Hopefully that shows up a little bit on the camera. And when I have it in this state, I can put my stamp on. So I think I commented this is a little bit past leather hard, so I don't know how it's going to stamp, but we'll see. Okay, it's a little bit light, but that's okay. This might be a more difficult question. So normally after I do every pot, I index this. So I'm going to assume that that's the case and it's on the correct number. So we'll go ahead and put the serial number stamp on there. Hopefully that will take. Yeah, that looks fine. So now we have a trimmed and identified pot, and this can now go on the drying shelf to dry down to bone dry so that it can be bisque fired. So I'm going to continue, however. I have 3 more pots here that I'm just going to trim up. So the next one, this one has been pre-trimmed. So you can see the angle there. I'd better advance my stamp. So this says 138. I'm going to move it to 139. And now I want to make sure that there's not a lot of clay all over the top of this. Just clean that up a bit. Take my second pot and righty-tighty, tightens that right up. So this should be relatively wobble-free. This is a tool that is designed for trimming pots that are very symmetrical. It's all set up around a symmetrical axis, and it really can't do avant-garde or asymmetrical pots. When we do those kind of pots, if we're even able to do this kind of trimming, you may want to just stick the pot to the center of a normal bat, and you can put some clay clumps down in lieu of these fingers. So with this pot, already been pre-trimmed, so we're just going to come there and neaten that up ever so slightly. And there's a little bit of a kind of a ridge here, so I want to smooth that in to the rest of the pot, make it look not so much like a ridge as a rounded corner or a rounded portion of the pot. That looks a little bit nicer. So now I've got, you can quite often see on the very bottom here, you can see some marks that are left over from the wiring, and we'd like to remove those. So I'll just do that by, again, taking my pear corer and coming right flat across the bottom, just trying to make that nice and smooth, and that looks pretty good. All of these shavings, they can either go in the tray, which a lot of them do, but I try to keep most of them in the bucket, and it's just a little neater that way. Okay, so I've got a flat bottom, I've got this edge, or this, what do you want to call it, corner, and now I'm just going to put a little bit of a rounded part right here, same as last time. Sometimes the tool will grab a little bit. If that happens, you just slow down. This actually looks pretty good. Just going to neaten it up a little bit. All right. Now with this one, just to show that there's many different ways, this is a nice flat clean bottom. It doesn't seem like it's going to scratch things. So I'm going to leave this just as it is, and I'm going to go ahead and put my stamp on there. Name stamp first. This is called a maker's mark. And then we'll do the number stamp. Okay, very good. So now we're going to set that one back on the bat, and we're just going to keep going. So here's a honey pot. It's been pre-trimmed. I've got to open up my grip, so we turn that counterclockwise or to the left. Again, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, just like any threaded object. Normally, threads tighten up when you go to the right, and they loosen up when you go to the left. So we go turn this to the right to tighten it up. Just snug that up. When your pots are a little bit wetter than this pot, there is a danger if you snug this up too much that you'll crush the pot and distort it. So don't do that, but you don't want to get it nice and firmly grabbed. So once again, I'm going to start with the coarse tool. I always start with the larger trimming tool, make some kind of big moves first. So the first thing is just starting right on that corner, trying to move myself around just a little bit so you can see the tool better. So we're going to start right on that corner and just kind of smooth things up. You can see the shavings come off very nicely.